The sky above the ruined moon was dark and silent. No wind, no life. Only cold dust drifting through the broken air. Commander Ethan Blake stepped out of his landing craft and looked around. His helmet light cut through the darkness, shining on cracked stone walls and half-buried machines. He had come here because of a weak distress signal, an old human frequency, one not used in years. The signal was faint and broken, like a ghost calling from the past. Command told him it was probably nothing, but Ethan had decided to check anyway. Something about the signal made his chest feel tight. He switched on his scanner. Signal source, 50 meters underground, it said in a soft robotic voice. Ethan sighed. Of course it had to be underground. He drew his sidearm and entered the ruins, moving carefully through long corridors covered with alien symbols. The air was thick and heavy. His boots crunched over bones, some not human. The deeper he went, the more his heart raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him. Every few steps he thought he heard a sound, a breath, a whisper, but when he turned around there was nothing. Only the cold, empty walls. After 20 minutes he reached a sealed metal door. The scanner flashed red. Life form detected behind barrier, it said. Ethan froze. A life form? After all this time? He pressed his ear against the cold metal and listened. For a moment there was silence. Then he heard it, soft, broken like a sob. A cry, "Hello?" Ethan shouted. His voice echoed down the hall. "Can you hear me?" The sound stopped. Then came another small cry, trembling and afraid. It was a girl's voice, but not quite human. There was something strange about it, something that made the hair on his neck stand up. Ethan holstered his gun and took out his plasma cutter. Sparks flew as he began to slice open the heavy door. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. His heart pounded faster with every cut. When the door finally fell open, a cloud of dust spilled out. Ethan stepped inside with his light raised and froze. The room was small and dark. Chains hung from the walls. And in the corner, lying on the cold floor, was a girl. She looked about 14, maybe 15. Her skin was pale blue, glowing faintly under the light. Her long silver hair stuck to her face, wet with tears. She was completely unclothed, her body thin and weak, her wrists bruised from the metal cuffs. Ethan quickly removed his jacket and covered her trembling form. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl looked up slowly. Her eyes were wide and bright like stars trapped in water. She tried to speak, but no words came out, only a small gasp. "It's okay," Ethan repeated, kneeling beside her. He checked her vitals with his scanner. Her heart rate was dangerously low. Her temperature was falling fast. He activated his comms. "Command, this is Blake. I've found someone. A life form. Female, possibly alien, possibly hybrid. She's alive but weak. I need extraction." No answer. The signal was dead. Ethan cursed quietly. The moon's surface must have blocked communication. He was alone. The girl reached out weakly, grabbing his wrist. Her hand was freezing cold, her skin smooth like glass. She whispered something, soft, broken words in a language he didn't know. "Shh," Ethan said. "Save your strength. I'll get you out." He tried to lift her, but she winced in pain. Her body was covered in scars, as if someone had tested or tortured her. Rage burned inside him. Who would do this? He looked around the room again. Strange machines covered the walls, still humming faintly. Symbols glowed on the screens, lines of alien code mixed with human letters. One word stood out, repeated again and again. Subject 0. Ethan's stomach turned. He grabbed the girl and wrapped her tighter in his jacket. "Hold on," he said. "You're coming with me." As he stepped out of the dungeon, the lights flickered. The ground trembled. Somewhere deep in the ruins, a low metallic roar echoed through the tunnels. The girl opened her eyes again, wide with fear. She whispered one word this time, clear enough for him to understand. "Run." Ethan's blood froze. He turned and ran, holding her close as the walls began to crack around them. The roar grew louder, like machines waking from sleep. Whatever had built this place had just realized he was here. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew the moment he saw her, this was no ordinary rescue. This was the beginning of something far greater. Something dangerous, and somewhere behind him, deep in the dungeon, red lights flickered on. A robotic voice echoed through the ruins. "Containment breach detected. Subject 0 has escaped." Ethan tightened his grip on the girl and whispered, "Not today." Then he vanished into the shadows, running toward the unknown. with the sound of alarms chasing him through the darkness. The night on the ruined moon seemed endless. Ethan ran through the narrow tunnels, his boots echoing against the cracked floor. The small alien girl clung weakly to his chest, trembling under his jacket. Each step he took felt heavier as the walls behind him shook and alarms screamed through the halls. Come on, he whispered to himself. His breath came out in short bursts. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Sparks fell from the ceiling like fireflies from hell. When he reached the surface, his ship was still where he left it, half buried under gray dust. He rushed inside, closing the hatch behind him just as the ground split open. A blue beam of light shot into the sky from the ruins. It was like the planet itself was crying out. Ethan laid the girl gently on the medical bed and activated the auto-healer. The machine scanned her body, humming softly. The holographic display filled with strange readings, energy levels he had never seen before. Human DNA. 40%, the computer said. Unknown alien composition, 60%. Warning, unstable cellular structure. Ethan frowned. 40% human? That can't be right. He looked down at her. She was still barely breathing. Her chest rose and fell so quietly he thought she might fade away at any moment. Her silver hair shimmered under the ship's lights. She looked fragile, like glass that could shatter with one touch. He soaked a cloth in water and gently wiped the dirt and blood from her face. She flinched but didn't pull away. Her skin was cool and soft, almost too perfect. When she opened her eyes, Ethan saw they were glowing faintly blue, like light trapped inside crystal. She blinked, confused and afraid. You're safe now, Ethan said softly. I'm not going to hurt you. The girl stared at him as if trying to understand his words. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Ethan turned to the console. Computer, activate Universal Translator. A small device lit up beside her bed. Translator active, the computer replied. The girl spoke again, her voice soft and shaky. Who are you? Ethan smiled gently. My name's Ethan Blake. I'm a commander from Earth. She frowned slightly as if trying to remember the word. Earth? She whispered. Then she shook her head. Don't know that. That's okay, Ethan said. We'll figure it out. She tried to sit up but gasped in pain. Ethan helped her back down. You need rest, he said. You were hurt badly. The girl closed her eyes for a moment. Then she whispered, They locked me there. Ethan's chest tightened. Who did? She didn't answer right away. Her hands trembled as she tried to remember. Men, machines, light everywhere. I screamed. No one came. Tears filled her eyes. They said I was broken. Ethan clenched his fists. Whoever had done this to her, human or not, he would find them. He checked her wrist again. There were faint burn marks, almost like someone had branded her. In the center of the mark, he saw strange symbols, half alien, half human letters. Do you remember your name? He asked softly. The girl blinked. Name? Something people call you. She shook her head slowly. They called me Subject Zero. Ethan's stomach turned. The same words he saw in the dungeon. He sat beside her, speaking gently. You're not a number. You're someone. The girl looked at him, confused by his kindness. Why help me? She asked quietly. Ethan sighed. Because I couldn't leave you there. No one deserves that. She was silent for a moment. Then her hand touched his sleeve, small and trembling. Thank you, she whispered. Before Ethan could reply, the ship's alarm blared. Incoming signal detected, said the computer. Ethan ran to the console. A red light blinked on the radar. Multiple ships were approaching fast. He zoomed in. The signature wasn't human, damn it, he muttered. They tracked the signal. The girl sat up, eyes wide with fear. They found me? Yes, Ethan said, loading the ship's weapons. But they're not taking you again. The ship trembled as the engines roared to life. Outside, dark shapes moved through the clouds, sleek alien hunters scanning the ground. Ethan looked back at her. Can you stay down and hold tight? She nodded weakly. We'll try. The moment they lifted off, beams of energy shot past the ship. Ethan dodged hard, flying low across the surface. The alien crafts followed close behind, firing again and again. Inside, the girl screamed as the ship shook violently. Ethan gritted his teeth, trying to keep control. Come on, baby, hold together. He yelled at the ship. A blast hit the rear engine. Warning lights flashed red. They were losing altitude. Ethan slammed a button on the console. Engaging jump sequence. Jump drive unstable, the computer warned. Do it anyway, he shouted. The ship lurched forward as bright light filled the cabin. Everything blurred, the stars stretched like threads, and then silence. They were gone. Ethan looked at the scanner. No pursuers. Just empty space. He leaned back, breathing hard. We made it, he whispered. The girl opened her eyes, weak but alive. Where are we? Ethan smiled faintly. Safe for now. She looked down, clutching the edge of his jacket. Then maybe I can dream. Her eyes slowly closed and she fell into a deep sleep. Ethan looked out the window at the stars, feeling both relief and fear. He didn't know who she was or why the galaxy wanted her gone, but he knew one thing for sure. This girl with no name had changed everything. The silence after the jump felt unreal. For a long moment, Commander Ethan Blake only heard the soft hum of his ship and the faint rhythm of his heartbeat. Outside, the stars drifted slowly, glowing like cold fire across the black sea of space. He turned to check on the girl. She was still asleep on the medical bed, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her breathing had grown steadier, her skin now glowing faintly in the soft light, but her hands were twitching like she was trapped in a nightmare. Ethan leaned closer. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe, but the ship's computer broke the calm. Warning, energy anomaly detected, Ethan frowned. Define anomaly, the computer replied. Unknown life force signature within ship, unstable. Before he could respond, a low hum filled the cabin. The air shimmered around the girl as blue light flowed from her body, spreading like waves in water. Tools on the nearby table rattled. The lights flickered and the ship's engine roared without command. Computer stabilize systems, Ethan shouted. Unable to comply, the computer said calmly. Source of interference is internal. The girl suddenly gasped and sat up. Her eyes were bright blue, glowing so strong they almost hurt to look at. Energy swirled around her like a storm. Ethan raised his arm to shield his face. Stop! You're going to tear the ship apart, he yelled. But she wasn't awake. Her mind was somewhere else, lost in a memory or a dream. Her voice shook as she spoke in a strange language, full of pain and fear. The walls began to crack. Sparks flew from the controls and alarms screamed through the cockpit. Ethan ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. You're safe! Listen to me, you're safe! Her eyes flickered. The blue light dimmed slowly and she fell into his arms, breathing hard. The energy faded from the air like smoke disappearing into wind. Ethan's heart raced. He looked around. The cabin was a mess. Half the systems fried, the controls burned. He laid her down again, panting. What are you? He whispered. The computer's voice broke the silence. Energy burst matched with theoretical records of biofusion anomalies. No known species capable of such reaction. Biofusion, Ethan repeated. The word chilled him. If the girl could unleash that kind of power without control, she wasn't just a survivor. She was a weapon. He checked her pulse again. It was steady. But her expression was peaceful now, almost innocent, as if nothing had happened. She looked like a sleeping child. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. What did they do to you? Hours passed. Ethan repaired what he could, though the ship's engines were barely holding. He set a course toward the nearest abandoned station, Eclipse Outpost 7, a forgotten mining base orbiting a dead star. It was risky, but he needed parts and the girl needed rest. As the ship drifted through the void, Ethan studied the data he had recovered from the moon. Strange lab files appeared on his screen, experiment logs in both human and alien code. Most were corrupted, but one message played clearly. Project Aurelia, Phase 9 complete. Subject 0 shows unmatched energy potential. Emotional triggers cause spontaneous energy surges. Containment impossible. Directive, terminate before awakening. Ethan's stomach twisted. Terminate before awakening. He looked at the sleeping girl. So her name wasn't Zero, it was Aurelia. He whispered softly. Aurelia, they tried to kill you. Her eyelids moved slightly, like she heard him even in her dreams. The ship finally reached Eclipse Outpost 7. The base floated in silence, its metal shell covered in frost and dust. No lights. No signs of life. Ethan guided the ship toward the docking bay. The door creaked open with a low groan and they landed safely. He carried Aurelia in his arms through the dark hallway. His flashlight lit broken pipes and scattered tools. The place smelled of old metal and cold air. He found a small room that still had power. Laying her on an old cot, he sat down beside her. She looked peaceful again, her faint blue glow lighting the walls around them. Ethan sighed and pulled a blanket over her. "You deserve better than this," he murmured. Then suddenly her hand moved. Her eyes opened, glowing softly in the dim light. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice weak but clearer than before. "An old station," Ethan said. "You passed out, you—" "Almost blew my ship apart," her face went pale. I didn't mean to. I don't know how to stop it." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we'll learn together." She stared at him with wide eyes. "Together?" "Yeah, you're not alone anymore." For a moment silence filled the room, gentle and strange. Then somewhere deep within the base a sound echoed. Clang. Then another. Clang. Ethan stood instantly, drawing his weapon. "Stay here," he whispered. Aurelia's eyes glowed brighter. "They found us," she whispered. Before Ethan could respond, the hallway lights flickered, and through the shadows came the sound of metal feet scraping against the floor. Drones. Ethan aimed his gun, his pulse racing. The rescue mission had just turned into war. And as blue sparks flickered around Aurelia's trembling hands, he realized she was no ordinary girl. She was the key to something much bigger. Something the galaxy wasn't ready for. The sound of metal footsteps grew louder in the corridor. Ethan's hand tightened around his blaster. His eyes darted to Aurelia, who sat trembling on the cot, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark room. "Stay low," he whispered. She nodded, her hands clutching the edge of the blanket, but her glow made it impossible to hide. The faint blue light pulsed softly from her skin like a heartbeat, spreading shadows across the walls. The door suddenly burst open with a flash of sparks. 3 drones stepped in, thin, spider-like machines with red eyes and long, sharp limbs. Their scanners focused on Aurelia. "Target located," they hissed in a metallic voice. "Subject 0. Recapture protocol initiated." Ethan fired first. A bright beam of plasma cut through the first drone, tearing it apart. The other 2 leapt forward, metal claws scraping against the floor. One slashed across Ethan's armor, sending him crashing into a wall. Sparks flew, Aurelia screamed. Her eyes flared bright blue again, flooding the room with light. The air rippled as invisible energy burst outward. The remaining drones froze mid-step, then shattered into 1,000 glowing fragments. Ethan blinked, stunned. "You did that?" "Again." Aurelia stared at her trembling hands, terrified. "I didn't want to. I can't stop it. It just happens when I'm scared." Ethan stood up slowly, breathing hard. "You saved us." "Don't apologize for that." He looked at the broken drones. Their remains still glowed faintly red. "These weren't just random machines," he said. "Someone sent them." He knelt and checked the nearest drone's core. The serial code was partially burned, but one word was still readable. "Council." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The Galactic Council, no. They wouldn't send killing machines for a child." Aurelia looked away. "They would. They made me." Ethan froze. "Made you?" She nodded weakly. "I wasn't born. They created me on the Forbidden Moon. They said I was part of a project. Project Aurelia." Ethan stepped closer. "That name, Aurelia." "That's you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It means light. They said I would bring light to the galaxy. But when I woke up, they said I was wrong, dangerous." Tears filled her eyes. "They locked me away because I couldn't control what I am." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "They experimented on you?" Her voice broke. "They hurt me. Over and over. They wanted to see how much pain I could take before I exploded." Ethan turned away, clenching his fists. Anger burned in his chest. He had seen cruelty before, but this was worse than anything he could imagine. He took a deep breath and faced her again. "You're not their experiment anymore, Aurelia. You're a person. You're free now." She looked up at him, confused but hopeful. "Free?" "Yes," he said firmly. "And I'll protect you, no matter what it takes." For the first time, Aurelia smiled faintly, small and fragile but real. After clearing the debris, Ethan searched the station's database. It was old and half-corrupted, but he managed to pull out a few surviving logs. The files were encrypted, marked Classified Bioweapon Development. He bypassed the security layers one by one until a message appeared on the cracked monitor. Log entry 72. Forbidden Moon Research Facility. Subject Aurelia notes human-alien hybrid. Energy source stable only under emotional control. Failed containment attempts resulted in catastrophic energy bursts. Directive from Galactic Council. Terminate project, destroy all evidence. Ethan read the last line aloud, his voice cold. Destroy all evidence. Aurelia looked at the screen with wide eyes. That's why they came after me. They don't want anyone to know. Ethan nodded slowly. And now they know you're alive. He saved the file into his wrist chip. We need to show this to the world, he said. If people find out what the council did, they'll turn against them. Aurelia shook her head. They'll never believe you. The council controls everything. Then we'll find someone who will, Ethan replied. There's always a way. Suddenly, the base's lights flickered again. The computer voice broke through the silence. Unauthorized data access detected. Security reinforcements inbound. Ethan's eyes widened. They traced us. Aurelia stood up slowly. Then we run again? He shook his head. Not this time. He grabbed his rifle and checked the power cells. We fight our way out. Aurelia hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes. If I lose control again, I could hurt you. Ethan smiled faintly. Then I'll take that risk. Outside, heavy metal doors were opening. The sound of engines and footsteps filled the air. Aurelia stepped beside him, her small hands glowing softly. I don't want to be a weapon, she whispered. You don't have to be, Ethan said. You just have to be brave, she nodded once. Then the walls shook as the first explosion hit. The war for the truth had begun, and Ethan knew there was no turning back. Somewhere in the shadows, as soldiers poured into the station, Aurelia whispered a single word under her breath, one that would soon echo across galaxies. Freedom. The sky outside the outpost burned red as enemy ships descended like falling stars. Their engines roared through the frozen silence, shaking the abandoned station. Inside, alarms screamed. The old walls trembled under the thunder of explosions. Ethan grabbed Aurelia's hand. We have to move now. She followed close behind, her small bare feet slipping on the metal floor. Her glow flickered weakly like a dying light. The fear in her eyes was real, but something else flickered there too. Determination. They ran through narrow corridors, the lights strobing red. The base's doors began to seal one by one as the council's troops landed outside. Heavy metal soldiers, half machine, half human, stormed in with weapons drawn. Ethan fired back, his blaster burning through the smoke. Keep low, he shouted. Aurelia pressed her hands to her ears as explosions echoed. One of the soldiers threw a grenade. Ethan grabbed her and rolled behind a crate as fire swallowed the hallway. When the smoke cleared, Aurelia's eyes were glowing again, bright and wild. Energy pulsed through her skin, humming in the air like static. No, wait, don't, Ethan shouted, realizing what was about to happen. But it was too late. A surge of blue light burst from her hands, knocking back everything in sight. The walls cracked, the ceiling split, and the soldiers were thrown across the room like rag dolls. The station shook so violently that metal dust rained down like ash. When the light faded, Aurelia collapsed against Ethan's chest, gasping for breath. He held her tight. You can't keep doing that. You'll burn yourself out. Tears streamed down her face. I don't know how to stop it. It hurts every time. I'll find a way, Ethan said. I promise. He carried her back to the ship as explosions lit up the sky. Outside, a fleet of Silver Council warships filled the horizon, spreading like a swarm. Their red lights locked onto his craft. Computer, activate stealth mode, he ordered. Stealth mode offline, came the cold reply. System damage critical. Of course it is, Ethan muttered, slamming his hand on the controls. Hold on, Aurelia. The ship roared to life, lifting off in a shower of sparks. Enemy fire streaked through the clouds as he dodged between laser bursts, twisting and diving through the chaos. Aurelia clung to his arm, shaking. Why do they want me so badly? Because you scare them, Ethan said grimly. And people destroy what they fear. Outside, the stars blurred as he pushed the ship to its limit. But the enemy was faster. One of the Council's cruisers locked on. A red beam shot through space, grazing the wing. The ship lurched violently. Warning, engine core unstable, said the computer. Not now, Ethan growled, pulling up hard. Come on, girl, don't fail me now. Aurelia reached out weakly, her hand pressing against the console. Blue energy spread across the control panel. The ship's dying lights flickered back to life. Ethan stared at her. You're healing it? She nodded faintly. I can feel the ship. It's alive. Like me. The engines roared louder, stronger. The small craft shot forward, leaving streaks of light behind it. The council ships tried to follow, but Aurelia's energy was interfering with their sensors. We lost them, Ethan said with a heavy sigh. At least for now. He looked over at her. Her skin was pale again, her light fading. You used too much power, he said quietly. She smiled weakly. I wanted to help you. Ethan felt a strange ache in his chest. You already did. Hours later, they drifted through the endless black. The stars outside looked peaceful now, almost kind. But Ethan knew peace never lasted long. He sat beside Aurelia, who was sleeping once again, wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked fragile, like something the universe itself was trying to protect. He opened the small data chip he had taken from the outpost and began scanning through it again. This time, a hidden message played. A woman's voice echoed softly through the cabin. Project Aurelia. Final phase initiated. The hybrid will soon reach maturity. If activated, she could reshape entire worlds. Do not allow her to fall into human hands, Ethan froze. Reshape worlds? He looked at the sleeping girl and whispered, What did they make you into? Suddenly, the radar beeped. A new signal appeared on the screen, one not from the council. It was an old human distress call, faint but real. Origin. Outer Rim Colony. Epsilon Ridge, said the computer. Ethan frowned. That place was destroyed years ago. But then he saw it. A coded message hidden inside the signal. It was his old command ID. Someone from Earth wanted him to come there. Ethan glanced back at Aurelia. Looks like we have one last safe place to run. He entered the coordinates and pulled the lever. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped into hyperspace. Aurelia stirred in her sleep, whispering softly, They'll never stop. Ethan looked out at the stars, his face hard. Then neither will I. He didn't realize it yet, but Epsilon Ridge would be their last stand. And the moment they landed there, the fate of the galaxy would begin to change. The sky over Epsilon Ridge was a bruised gray, filled with silent lightning and the remains of a world long forgotten. Once this place had been a thriving human colony. Now it was a graveyard of broken towers and silent winds. Ethan's ship descended through the dark clouds, engines sputtering from the last jump. We're running on fumes, he muttered. One more hit and we'll fall apart. Aurelia sat beside him, pale and weak but awake. Her glow was faint now, barely a whisper of light under her skin. She stared out the cracked window. This place feels wrong. It's the only place left, Ethan said quietly. We'll hide here, fix the ship, and send a signal to Earth. They'll come. He didn't believe his own words, but he had to sound like he did. She needed hope. The ship landed on a wide plateau surrounded by jagged cliffs. The air outside was cold and thin. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the horizon with his rifle ready. Nothing but silence and dust. Aurelia followed, wrapped in his old jacket. The wind caught her silver hair, making it shimmer faintly. It's so quiet, she said softly. Too quiet, Ethan replied. He turned back toward the ship, setting up a perimeter. Stay close. If the council tracked our jump, they'll find us soon. Aurelia nodded, though her eyes were distant, lost in thought. Ethan, if they come, I don't want you to fight for me. He looked at her sharply. What are you talking about? They'll kill you. They always kill anyone who tries to protect me. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady but gentle. I've faced worse than death, kid. You think I came all this way just to give up now? She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly blue. You don't understand. I can feel them. They're close, and they want me alive, but not as I am. What do you mean? Aurelia pressed a hand to her chest. They built something inside me. A power they can control if they get close enough. They can turn me into what they wanted me to be. Her voice trembled. A weapon that kills everything. Ethan's breath caught. We'll stop them before that happens. How? She whispered. He looked toward the distant hills where faint red lights flickered in the clouds. Council ships descending like vultures. We hold them off, as long as it takes. By nightfall, Ethan had fortified the ridge with old colony cannons, patched together with parts from the ship. The sound of approaching engines grew louder in the distance. Aurelia sat beside a dying fire, her hands glowing faintly as she tried to warm them. They won't stop, will they? She asked. No, Ethan said, loading his blaster. But neither will I. He turned toward her. You said they can control you if they get close. Can you block it? I don't know, she said honestly. It's like a voice in my head, a command I can't ignore. Ethan knelt in front of her, then listened to mine instead. No matter what happens, don't let them win. Promise me that. Aurelia looked into his eyes. I promise. The first explosion hit an hour later. The ridge shook, rocks flying through the air. Ethan fired from behind cover, taking down the first wave of drones. Their red eyes flashed in the dark like dying stars. Aurelia stood back, trembling, watching the sky fill with ships. Ethan, she shouted over the noise. There are too many. Keep your promise, he yelled back. More ships descended. Laser fire lit up the night. Ethan kept shooting, his armor scorched and cracked until one blast hit the ground beside him. He fell hard, his side burning. Aurelia screamed his name. Something inside her snapped. Her glow flared brighter than ever before. Blinding blue light spilled from her eyes, her hair, her hands. The world around her froze for a heartbeat. Then she raised her arms and a wave of pure energy exploded outward. The sky itself seemed to split open. Every drone, every ship, every weapon within miles was torn apart in a storm of light. The ridge burned white hot. The earth shook and then silence. When the dust settled, Ethan lay motionless among the rubble. Aurelia crawled toward him, her body weak, her glow fading. Ethan, she whispered, touching his hand. Please wake up. He opened his eyes slowly, his voice rough but alive. Still here? Though I'd prefer a little less light next time. Aurelia laughed softly, tears streaming down her cheeks. But her light was fading fast. I use too much, she said quietly. I can feel it slipping away. Ethan sat up weakly. No, stay with me. You did it, you stopped them, she smiled faintly. For now. But they'll come again. And if they ever find me alive, they'll keep trying. Ethan held her close. Then I'll keep fighting. Her eyes shone one last time, soft and full of peace. You already did. Then her body turned weightless, dissolving into 1,000 blue lights that drifted into the sky like tiny stars. Ethan reached out, tears in his eyes as her voice echoed faintly in the wind. Thank you for showing me freedom. And then she was gone. Ethan sat alone on the ridge, staring at the horizon. The council's ships were gone. The galaxy was quiet again. But far above, the stars shimmered brighter than before, like they had taken a breath after centuries of silence. Ethan whispered into the wind. You gave them hope, Aurelia. You gave us all hope. And for the first time in years, the soldier who had lost everything finally felt alive. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than battle. Ethan Blake sat alone on the ridge where Epsilon's sky had burned blue. The air was cold now, quiet except for the soft hum of the wind brushing over metal ruins. His ship lay half buried in dust beside him, damaged but still breathing like him. It had been 3 days since Aurelia vanished into the light. 3 long, sleepless nights of staring at the stars, waiting for a sign. He still saw her face when he closed his eyes, the way her glow had faded like a dying sun, the way she had smiled just before disappearing. He didn't know how to explain it to anyone, not even to himself. She wasn't dead. He could feel that. Somewhere beyond the dark, beyond what humans could see, she was still there. Watching. Ethan stood slowly, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. His armor was cracked, his weapon gone, but his spirit somehow was still standing. He looked up at the wide, endless sky. The stars shimmered brighter tonight, thousands of tiny lights flickering in rhythm. Is that you, kid? He whispered. For a moment, one star blinked brighter than the rest, as if answering him. He smiled faintly. Yeah, I thought so. A week later, an Earth rescue team finally reached the ridge. Their ships landed with roaring engines and bright lights that turned the dust into silver fog. Commander Blake, shouted a young soldier as he ran out. We picked up your signal. By God, we thought you were dead. Ethan looked at them wearily. Not yet. They escorted him aboard their ship, giving him water, food, and medical care. But the first question everyone asked wasn't about him. It was about the explosion. The light seen across half the sector, what was it? They asked. Some kind of weapon? Ethan only shook his head. Not a weapon. A miracle. The scientists wanted answers, the officers wanted reports, and the council, what was left of it, wanted silence. They called the event the Epsilon phenomenon. But none of them understood what had really happened that night. Aurelia hadn't destroyed. She had changed, weeks turned into months. Ethan recovered on Earth, though the doctors said his body carried traces of unknown radiation. He didn't care. What mattered was what came after. Planets once marked as dead had started to heal. Atmospheres were reforming. Oceans were returning. Even barren moons showed signs of life, tiny green shoots pushing through alien soil. The scientists were calling it a cosmic reformation, but Ethan knew better. It was Aurelia's energy, the breath of her being spreading across the galaxy. She had become what she was meant to be. Not a weapon, not an experiment. A savior. One night, Ethan stood on a quiet hill near the ocean. The water shimmered under the twin moons, and the air smelled clean for the first time in decades. He closed his eyes, letting the wind brush against his face. He thought he heard her voice then. Soft, familiar, like the hum of starlight. Ethan. He opened his eyes quickly, looking around, but no one was there. Only the waves and the whispering wind. Still, the air around him glowed faintly blue for a moment, just like her light. He smiled sadly. You can't stay away, can you? The light flickered again, brighter this time, forming small particles in the air, tiny, floating sparks that danced like fireflies. Ethan reached out his hand, and one of the sparks landed on his palm. Warm, gentle, alive. Aurelia's voice echoed softly in his mind. I'm not gone. I'm part of them now. Part of everything. His throat tightened. You said you wanted to be free. I am, she whispered. And now they can breathe again. Because of you? The sparks drifted upward, forming a glowing trail toward the stars. Ethan watched them rise until they disappeared. He stood there for a long time, tears silently falling, but for the first time, they weren't from pain. They were from peace. The next morning, Ethan left Earth again, not as a soldier, but as an explorer. He took his old ship, now repaired, and renamed it the Aurelia. On its hull, he carved 6 simple words. She gave the stars their breath. He traveled from system to system, visiting the world she had touched. He saw plants blooming on rocks that once held only death. He saw light glowing in alien skies. He saw hope returning to places where there had been none. Everywhere he went, people spoke of the same thing. Blue lights appearing at night, hovering like angels, healing the air and water. They called it the breath of Aurelia, and though no one else could hear her voice, Ethan knew she was there. Every star that twinkled, every wind that whispered carried a piece of her spirit. Years later, old and tired, Ethan returned to Epsilon Ridge one last time. The place was different now. Green grass covered the rocks and the air smelled of rain. He sat on the same spot where she had vanished and looked up at the night sky. The stars pulsed softly, just like before. He smiled. You kept your promise, kid. You brought life back. A faint blue shimmer appeared in the air around him, wrapping him in light. Rest now, her voice whispered. You're home. Ethan closed his eyes, a peaceful smile on his face. The wind grew quiet, and as dawn touched the ridge, the light rose slowly into the sky. 2 lights this time, one gold and one blue, twisting together as they disappeared among the stars. The galaxy would remember them not as soldier and weapon, not as man and alien, but as the two who gave the stars their breath again.